Welcome to Plant Your Seed. I'm your host, Fred Ferris. On each episode, we share stories of how ordinary people have transformed their lives. Each story is compassionate, each story is authentic, and each story is a transformation. Here are the stories of the people who are changing our world by transitioning to a plant-based diet. Today on Plant Your Seed, joining us from California, we have Toni Okamoto. Toni is the founder of Plant-Based on a Budget, the popular website and meal plan that shows you how to save dough by eating veggies. She's also the author of a series of cookbooks, with her latest being Plant-Based on a Budget, Quick and Easy. Welcome, Toni.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to chatting with you today.
Thanks for being here on Plant Your Seed. Now, with inflation, both parents working, family budgets being tight everywhere, one thing that I love about your cookbooks is that they show plant-based eating can be very inexpensive. With your latest cookbook, Plant-Based on a Budget, Quick and Easy, you tap into a major challenge for plant-based eating, and that's speed. People don't want to spend 3 hours making a meal. It's just not feasible these days. How did the concept for your latest cookbook come about?
When I started Plant-Based on a Budget, I had way more time than money. I cooked everything from scratch because that was the only option for me. I showed people how to make their own bread and their own pizza dough. But now I've found myself in a place in my life where I am very strapped for time, and my friends are very strapped for time. Most of them have children, dogs that they need to walk, a spouse, a full-time job, sometimes 2 jobs, and it is really rough to prioritize healthy eating while being budget conscious and strapped for time. So I wanted to address all of those concerns, and it's something that I also experience firsthand. So I'm able to apply directly what I'm eating to show people how they can overcome those challenges that are very valid and totally understandable, and still bring a nice, warm, nourishing meal to their family's table.
Now, what is it about meal planning that makes it so important?
It's important not to impulsively shop if you are on a budget or if you are having some health goals that you're trying to achieve. I work with a lot of people who have recently chatted with their doctors about how they need to cut back on certain animal-based foods. And so they're just stepping into plant-based eating. And if you don't have a plan, you revert back to your old habits. And we want to make sure that people are set up for success and that they're not shopping impulsively once they go to the grocery store, because once you're at the grocery store, it's game over. There's so much colorful packaging and big sale signs. They'll get you if you don't come with a plan.
Yeah, I just stop at those end caps. I'm like, what's this?
Yep. Did you know that that's paid placement often?
Oh, no, I didn't.
You got to go to the ingredient section of what you're looking for. So if you're looking for a can of beans, don't be fooled by the end caps being the sale price. Go to the aisle with the beans and make sure you're getting the best price per ounce.
What is one kitchen tool that you feel is essential and worth the money?
I have a whole variety of them, and I think it depends on where you are in your kitchen stocking journey. When I started, I had nothing. I had my parents hand me down 20-year-old knives that all were like butter knives. It took me like a minute to cut a tomato, and I had no Tupperware. I only used reused jars and containers that other food had come in. So it was very mix and match, and I made it work. So I don't want anyone to think that you have to go out and buy the fanciest stuff. But if you can invest, I recommend a good knife. That'll save you a lot of time. And also, it's safer to have a sharp knife than a dull knife. Then I also recommend a nice pot and a pan with a lid, because that'll help you with cooking your brown rice. For a long time, I didn't have a pan with a lid, so I'd have to use my pot and then put my pan on top of it to capture the steam for the rice to cook. So you can get around it, but it's so much easier if you just have a lid for your pan. And then if you have it within your budget, I really, really, really love my pressure cooker. I have an electric pressure cooker.
Mm.
It has revolutionized the way I cook, and it makes it so that I can have really wholesome ingredients in my meals without having to fuss. I can go walk my dog while I'm cooking a chili, and it'll take about 5 minutes of active cook time plus build up and the release of the pressure. But then it turns off automatically. So while I'm walking my dog, I don't have to worry about my house catching on fire or it exploding or anything like that. I can come back to a home that's filled with the most delicious aromas and then have a nice, comforting meal.
And so that's like a Instapot. Is that like a
Yep.
pressure cooker, right?
Yes, there are all kinds of different ones. I have an Instant Pot, but there's a Ninja. There are other brands that are more affordable, and there are also ways to get them at a discount. I know that Amazon has returned Instant Pots, and I got mine for $30 off with a dent in it, and it's only cosmetic. It doesn't affect its performance, and so you can find ways to save some money when you're purchasing Instant Pots.
I guess my go-to kitchen tool is the Vitamix. I know it's expensive,
Oh, yeah.
but smoothies, soups, just lots of things you can just throw in that Vitamix and it's all good.
What people don't know about the Vitamix is that it's so versatile. You can make your own nut butters. You can make your own, you said soups, but
Yep.
a lot of people don't realize that it actually cooks the soup. It's so powerful that it heats your soup up.
Yeah.
And that is so, so cool.
It is. Now, one thing I noticed in your cookbook was smoothie packs. I just think this is a fantastic idea. I love this idea. When did you decide that smoothie packs were a thing, and which one's your favorite?
Well, my husband, who shout out to him for doing this all the time. He is a very extremely disciplined person. He wakes up at 6 a.m. He goes to the gym, then he comes home and he always has a smoothie from a pack that he's already created the night before. Always. This is his routine. And he always prioritizes health, and it's so much easier for him before work to do that the night before, so he's not super rushed in the morning. He puts his all in the blender the night before, but I thought, wow, you can meal prep this by putting them into Ziploc bags or reusable silicone bags, which is what I use, and make your life so much easier throughout the day. Especially if you have a big family, you can really put in maybe half an hour's worth of work for a week or two of smoothie packs. And my favorite, I really love adding a bunch of spinach or kale with some bananas. The bananas will really mask the bitterness of the kale.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you don't like kale, you can use the spinach and have a totally neutral flavor. And then I love blueberries. Another one that I love is bananas, some peanut butter, and you can dollop that into the bag directly. It'll freeze, but it'll blend once you add that milk in the morning. Bananas, frozen cherries, a little bit of cocoa powder, and peanut butter. It is so tasty.
That sounds really good. There's so many great tips in your new cookbook, like smartly stored foods, which is a huge problem for me, and food waste. I love the tip about tossing the ripe avocado in the fridge. What is your favorite food storage tip?
I really love not putting it into my mind that food storage is a big burden. And sometimes what I do to make it less effort is simply take the bag of spinach that I know is on its way out and toss it directly into the freezer. I just pull it out, stick it right into the freezer. And I think we've built things like food storage up in our head to be a lot of effort when really it's just stopping something from spoiling. And so many things can be tossed directly into the freezer, like we'll say that bag of spinach. And then next time you're doing a stir fry or a soup, you can just take that bag of spinach and pour it directly into your stir fry. And it's not a lot of effort. You stopped yourself from wasting money and having food go to waste. That's a terrible feeling. I feel like I'm just tossing my dollars in the trash that are hard earned.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I try to talk myself into too when life gets really busy, and I intended to eat all the fresh produce, but I got too busy to consume it all. So if I don't have the time, instead of tossing it, I just throw it in the freezer in the same package it came in, and we're good to go.
That's a great tip. Optional additions and swaps and Tony's tip section are such great additions to your book. What made you realize that these sections were something that you wanted to add into your cookbook?
Thank you. First of all, it makes me happy that you like those. I learned how to cook from cookbooks,
Mm-hmm.
and I was on a very tight budget. I would go to the library. So I've been vegan for quite some time now. I've been vegan for 16 years, and I was vegetarian before that. So when I started, the resources weren't as abundant as they are now. I
Right.
would go to the library because online blogs didn't really there was a veg web,
Right.
but they weren't as plentiful as they are today. So I'd go to the library and check out a cookbook, see what I liked, and I wanted to modify. Often they were vegetarian cookbooks that I was making vegan.
Right.
And I would print out the recipe, photocopy the recipe at the library, bring it home, and then write all over it on how I made it my own. I put in what my family liked or my friends liked, what I liked, what were cheaper ingredients. So say this spice was cheaper than this spice, or instead of making my own taco seasoning blend, I just bought a packet and said the packet works. The packet's 50 cents.
Right.
So I really customized the recipes I was using, and I wanted that for my cookbook. I wanted it to go into someone's home and for them to use my recipe as a guide. And I also wanted to make sure that people who were on a very extremely tight budget could use the cookbook, but also people who are not on a super tight budget and who have a little bit of flexibility to spend more had the option to enhance the flavors, to enhance the textures. So I created a very simple recipe. Then I created a section for optional additions. Say you have these things on hand or you have more money to spend at the grocery store. These are things I recommend. These are swaps I like. These are things that could really, really bring the flavors to life. And then I leave a section for my testers. I have 100 recipe testers that I work with who go through my recipes. They're extremely diverse. They have very different cooking styles. They live in different environments. They have children, no children. It's a very diverse group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to make sure that every person could like the recipe, whether they ate McDonald's for lunch or whether they eat no oil, no salt, no sugar in their homes. So that was really important. And I included their recipe tips. And then I leave room for the reader to modify. I leave these blank lines called my tips, and you write in what is good for your family.
Yeah, that's great because, I don't know about you, but I'm always writing in the middle of the cookbook and writing, okay, I don't want this. I want to cross this out. I want to do this. And there's a lot of different things. So that's a great little addition on the bottom. Now, what was the biggest challenge you faced making this cookbook?
Oh, it's definitely working with recipe testers. Recipe testers are fantastic because they help you with quality control. I have 5 people test each recipe, and if I don't get at least a 7, then it's scrapped. It's totally gone. If I get a 7, then I go back to the drawing board and I tried to enhance it with their feedback. But they really help me understand and problem solve before it gets to the reader. And I would much rather have that experience than read about it on an Amazon review that somebody wasted their money because it didn't turn out the way they had expected. And I don't want to waste anyone's money. I don't want to waste anyone's time. And also, I really care that people enjoy their experience in eating plant-based. Sometimes it's their first, and I want to make sure it's positive.
Did you ever get anything back that you thought was great and it just wasn't? Sure. And you're like, wait a minute, time out.
That's why I have so many recipe testers, because it helps me understand, like, if everybody except one person gives it a 10 out of 10 and one person gives it a 3, it helps me realize that it could be that person's personal preference.
Mm-hmm.
So I have an average rating that I'm looking for because everyone has such a different palate.
Sure.
And I want to ensure that this person's palate didn't throw off the other 4 people who thought it was the best recipe they've ever tried. So I have to have it run by 5 people, and if I could do more, it's such a hard process. If I could do more, I would have, but 5 is a lot of people to make sure that they're doing it when they say they're going to do it.
Sure. And then, I mean, just try to get 5 people together to watch the same movie.
Yeah.
It's kind of difficult. Now, you mentioned in the introduction of your book that you inspired your loved ones to overcome generational history of lifestyle-related illnesses. What did you mean by this?
Well, when I started Plant-Based on a Budget, I was really inspired by my background in activism.
Mm-hmm.
I would see a problem and I would want to do anything I could to help fix it. And there was this ongoing conversation about how eating plant-based is too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, a lot of people who could really benefit from eating plants are suffering from very severe diet-related health issues. And my family was part of that group. My aunt had multiple amputations prior to having passed away from type 2 diabetes. My grandpa, who helped raise me, he had a heart attack and surgeries and then ultimately passed away from complications in a triple bypass surgery. I had an uncle who was 40, had a heart attack. It was really awful. And I felt like this was something that I could do to hopefully inspire some meal changes, showing that you don't have to shop at an expensive grocery store. You don't have to shop anywhere else but the grocery store that's nearest your home. You don't have to spend a fortune. You don't have to use new, unfamiliar ingredients. It can be the food that you love with simple swaps. And it really caught on. There were a lot of people who felt like it was expensive, and I was then providing the resource that showed otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that are expensive, you know, like the processed meats and stuff like that they have now. But rice, beans, apples, things like that have been affordable for quite a long time now.
Absolutely. And if you're looking at any budget book, any budget cookbook, I've read most of them. I've studied them. I'm talking non-vegetarian budget cookbooks. One of the repeat tips is to eat less meat, or to have a meatless Monday, or to swap out the meat. And so across the board, universally, eating less meat has been a money saver. And I don't know where the misconception comes from, probably because of the more processed options available, which I'm really grateful exist.
Right.
But I hope that with my resources, people feel more comfortable and more supported eating a more whole foods, plant-based diet.
Now, you mentioned that your family had some difficulties from the way they ate. Did that have an impact on you in your transition to a plant-based diet, or was that after that?
That was after, but I had my own wake-up call. It wasn't a wake-up call. It was just information provided to me that I didn't know before. And that was when I was about 16 years old. So that's 20 years ago. I was running track at my high school, and my coach suggested that I eat less red meat and eat less processed food, less fast food. And he suggested that because I was feeling sick to my stomach after I was running, and I should not be vomiting after I run every single time. And I had never thought about the food that I ate and how it impacted how I felt or how it fueled my body. It was always about taste and sustenance. So that was really new information. that I wouldn't really dig too much into until later in life.
Can you give us an idea of how and when you transitioned to a plant-based diet?
I started very slowly and gradually after that conversation. I began to feel better as an athlete and recover faster. I stopped getting sick. And when I left my parents' house, it became much easier. It was culturally very shocking for my parents to not eat their food. And that is a whole challenge in itself, to reject your family's food and have them feel disrespected or hurt or like they're burdened by your choices. And so once I left my parents' house, it became much easier. And around 18, I became what I thought was vegetarian-ish, but now I know is not really vegetarian because I didn't consider chicken broth in a soup. If it was a vegetable soup, I didn't think twice about it being a chicken broth. Or I would, if I had a free pizza, I would take the pepperonis off, or things like that. Sure. So I just didn't eat meat, but I wasn't as concerned about ingredients as I am now. And then it wasn't until I went into a community college at the age of 20 that I learned more about animal ethics. I took an intro to ethics course, and the professor did 1/3 of the course on animal ethics. And as extra credit for the course, she suggested that we go to this vegetarian club on campus. And I went because I needed extra credit, not because I wanted a veg community. But having one and meeting people who were my age, who experienced similar challenges in life, and feeling like, wow, these are my people. These are really cool people who are already vegetarian and vegan, made me feel like I could do it too. These people face similar obstacles. They're doing it, they're thriving, and I can do that too. So I felt inspired, I felt supported, and I went vegan at that time. And I think also the education portion really came into play. I was learning in my course about animal ethics. I was learning about environmentalism. I was learning about health. I visited an animal sanctuary and got to hang out with animals. And all of it together at the same time helped me move forward with that decision that I was then and am still very imperfect at. I show myself a lot of grace, and it's never been about perfection for me. It's about doing the least amount of harm to my own body and also to the world and to animals.
Now, you mentioned the difficulties that you had when you were 16, 17, 18, before you moved out of your parents' house. What were some of those difficulties? Can you give us an example?
Well, I am a pleaser to my parents. I love them. I respect them. I never want to make them upset, make them feel like I'm ungrateful. And at that time, I didn't know how to navigate the two, to have my own choices for who I wanted to be and what I wanted for myself, and also to, with those decisions, challenge the way my parents were eating and the way they were feeding me. And so I had to learn how to cook more for myself. I had no real cooking skills. And at that time, I wouldn't say I learned how to cook. I learned how to warm up my own canned food and make a salad, things like that. Yeah. It was nothing complicated, but that was putting me in a position where for the first time I was really fending for myself, and also standing up for myself and what I wanted long term.
How did that feel, to stand up for yourself?
It's hard to be challenged, especially when my family is really, my dad is a big meat lover. He is a competitive fisherman. He loves to smoke his meats in the backyard, and it's part of who he is. And it makes me feel like I can be different, and that's okay. And I know why I am the way I am. It makes me strive to find that passion within myself and to really call upon it when I'm challenged in any way. And later on, I would learn that I don't need to be the most expert person to answer every question. And now I hardly answer questions in general. Like if I'm with someone and I don't know if they're genuinely interested in learning about vegetarianism or if they are just being a pain. If I don't know, if I can't tell, then I'll say, you know what, I'm going to pass along a book. I have a book. It's really fantastic. I like to recommend How Not to Die. I like to recommend a few others as well. If you want to read that book and then come talk to me, or there's a Netflix documentary that I think you'll really love, then I'll talk to you, because then they already put in the effort.
Right.
And I know that they are really seriously, genuinely interested. But if they don't want to put in that effort and they just want to challenge me, I'll say, let's just enjoy this meal that we're eating together, and we can talk about this later. And I don't feel that pressure anymore to be the expert on every subject, on nutrition, on animal agriculture, on environmentalism. I just say, let's enjoy our time together.
That's a great response, because it's challenging as vegans, right? That we feel that we need to know all the stats and everything, so that, because people always come up to you and they question you and they're like, oh, well, how much water does a cow take versus an almond tree? And you're like, I don't know. Google it. Go find out. I mean, I know for me it's fine. But yeah, it's interesting how people will kind of challenge you because of your beliefs. And I feel that a lot of that is their own values, that they're challenging their own values and they're thinking for themselves. And at some point, they just aren't sure what they should be doing. So they're looking for one of us or somebody to help them along the way that they want to go anyway.
What I have found with my new approach, because I haven't always been as chill as I am now, what I have found with my current approach is that when you aren't asking or demanding anything of anybody, and you're always there for a resource, when they're ready, they'll come to you. And I have had the biggest meat lovers, naysayers to vegetarianism, veganism. They have come to me a decade later. They used to make fun of me. They used to say, do you want a hamburger? Like, eat a hamburger, just have a bite. And now they're coming to me because there's so much information out there. I have Kaiser Permanente for my healthcare. And I recently was on hold for a doctor's visit. And they were promoting a plant-based diet on the hold call. And I was like, what in the world? It blows my mind. So this information is everywhere, and people are coming around to it because they know someone who is a bodybuilder and who does it, or they know someone who's a doctor and does it. And so they're more interested. And because I've been someone who's really now very relaxed and am ready to talk to them when they come to me, and I get to support them, and it's so cool.
Now, what is the most rewarding part of what you do? Is that what it is? When people come to you and you're able to help them?
Absolutely. And not only is it rewarding that I get to help the individual, but often, especially in my case, my audience is primarily women who are around 45 years old, or 35, 45, 55, and they're making decisions for their families. And when they get to decide what they're eating for dinner, and it's introducing more plant-based ingredients, then their children are growing up with that, and their children are going to grow up and have their own kids and feed them what their parents fed them. And that's how it is. It's very generational, and I get to help be the initial change in the pattern. And and it's very, very cool.
Yeah, that's great. Do you ever get people contacting you on social media and saying, you know what, thanks for having your cookbook because it really helped me to change my diet?
Every day I get to hear from people every day. I've had plant-based on a budget now for 11 years.
Right.
It's been a big part of my life, and I have a podcast and books and resources that are free all over the internet. And so something somewhere has touched someone, and I'm so lucky to be part of the lives of so many people who are just stepping into plant-based eating, and it's such a huge honor for me, and I take it so seriously.
How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel grateful, and it also helps me stay inspired. Having I used to work in doing something very similar in vegan advocacy for a nonprofit organization, and then I used to also work for an animal sanctuary before that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see problems very clearly, and they are very serious, it can feel overwhelming. But to be part of this solution on this end, where I'm helping people incorporate more plant-based dishes into their lives, is inspiring, because it's not only helping them live more full, healthy lives,
Mm-hmm.
but there are also so many other benefits that happen as a result of their changes, and help address some of those issues of the weight of the world that I felt at that time, that make me feel lighter and happier and more inspired for the future.
Now, besides your brand new cookbook, what is one thing that's really exciting for you with either plant-based on a budget or in your life right now?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel really inspired that people are taking control of their health right now. They are more open than ever to eating plant-based. And 1 decade ago, it was not that way. People
Right.
didn't know how to pronounce vegan. They made fun of me all the time. They gave me a hard time. There was nothing for me to eat in many places. And now I go places and they know what vegan means. They know what I can eat and what I don't eat. And they also want to accommodate me, which is amazing. I can't believe it. And it makes me hopeful that this will continue and make it even easier for people who are just going plant-based now.
Where did you get the courage to start your project? You mentioned that a long time ago when you started, things weren't the same. It was more challenging. It was difficult to be vegan. Where did you get the courage to start your blog and then eventually plant-based on a budget?
I first started because of, again, my activist background. I was really into helping people and animals. And I also had the life experience that translated perfectly to eating on a budget. I was living below the poverty line for almost my whole adult life. And I would say that really changed when I got married and became a dual income household. And I've been married for 4 years. So we became a dual income household. We don't have any children. And it really, splitting the expenses of my life with someone really changed everything. But before that, I was responsible for my finances. I had a lot of debt. I started off my adult life with a ton of debt. And being able to use food as a tool to help me get out of debt, to make sure that I was shopping smartly, saving money, and eating well, helped me help people use that experience and help them achieve their goals of maybe financial freedom one day, or eating an abundance of plants, feeling better, having better digestion. There were just so many benefits. And I think that the real attraction was that I experienced it too. And it's not someone who's talking at someone else with things that they think could work. It was, these are working for me as I try to navigate this in a very similar space in my life.
When you think back on your decision to go vegetarian at the time and and then eventually vegan. What sticks out in your mind?
It is that I was never harsh on myself. I've made all kinds of decisions that were to be kind to myself. So if I got something that I later found out had sour cream in it, like guacamole that I ate the guacamole and I thought, well, it's avocados, I'm going to eat it. And then I found out that they had mixed some sour cream. I don't beat myself up. I just keep moving on. And I always look for the strength in myself to say, well, I'm just going to choose a fully vegan option the next time or the next time or the next time. And if I make a mistake, it's fine. I can just keep moving forward. And that's something that I know, I'm very confident that has helped me stay vegan for the 16 years that I've been.
Now, over the years that you've been doing this, what is the most important thing that you've learned?
Is that for me, I mentioned this earlier, it's all about progress and not perfection. I just want to keep being better, doing better, always keep kindness and compassion at the forefront of my mind, to myself, to the environment, to the animals. And it helps propel me moving forward all the time.
What is one cookbook or book or documentary, besides your own stuff, obviously, that you feel that you would give to somebody who is transitioning to a plant-based diet? Now, you mentioned Dr. Geiger's book. Is there anything else?
I love that there are documentaries available on Netflix for free. There is What the Health, there's Game Changers, there's Cowspiracy. There's so many and more coming that make it really accessible. Most people have Netflix now, and I hear from people all the time who just watched one of those documentaries and were inspired to make a change. So if you have Netflix, check out one of the ones that I just mentioned, and you will likely be very inspired too.
Now, finally, can you give me one word to describe how you felt before you were vegan and one word to describe how you feel now that you are vegan?
I felt unwell. That was what started the whole journey for me, was that I was getting sick after my running. And now I'm thriving. I feel really good. I have since gone on to run even longer distances at faster paces. I've run a marathon. I've been an athlete and have still excelled on a plant-based diet. And so I feel like in general, I'm feeling well and thriving.
So unwell and thriving. All right. I love it. It's such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. What is the best way for people to get your new cookbook and to follow you on the web or social media in general?
Thank you so much for chatting with me today. For anybody who's interested in my new cookbook, they can find it at plantbasedonabudgetcookbook.com. And I am on social media at plantbasedonabudget across social media platforms.
Okay, the name of the cookbook again is Plant Based on a Budget, Quick and Easy. I can't wait to try some of these recipes. They look great. Thanks again, Toni, for being on Plant Your Seed.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hope you are inspired by this story, and remember, it's never too late to plant your seed. Links to everything we talked about on the podcast can be found on Instagram at plant.yourseed in the show notes tab in the bio. If you enjoyed the show, remember to leave us a review, and until next time, thank you for listening.